it makes sense if they were much more cautious in their private investments than they were in their professional investments. But when we actually look at their portfolios, the CEOs of these big banks and the executives, they were not only investing in the same things as banks, but they were investing in their own banks. They were implying inequity, implying that they actually thought their banks were fine. So I suspect the too big to fail story in this case, I think it's a very, very important part of the puzzle overall, but I don't know if it works in this case. Second point, the best paper, I think, on the financial crisis is by a guy called Jeffrey Friedman. It's a short version of his book with Vladimir Krauss called Engineering the Financial Crisis, but the paper is Crisis of Politics and Economics. And they argue that the really interesting question is not why did banks make mistakes, it's why did they all make the same mistakes at the same time. They point to things like the Basel regulations, which incentivized banks to kind of hold certain kinds of debt, risk weightings, which encourage mortgage debts over business debts, for example, and regulations to do with ratings agencies, all of which were intended to be prudent. You know, all of this was meant to make banks safe by making them hold this certain amount of capital, risk weighting it so they couldn't get out of that by taking really risky capital, having ratings agencies to kind of verify that this capital was safe. And it all turned out just to be a mistake. And when one bank makes a mistake, that bank collapses, but you don't have a banking crisis. When every single bank makes that same mistake at the same time, then you have a really, really big problem. So that's the second kind of point. I think that's a really, really interesting explanation that actually answers most of the problems that most of the stories don't give. The third is where I think Brian would disagree with me, which is I think that the Fed, I subscribe to the monetarist view of this recession and of most recessions, and I think that the Fed indicating that it would tighten policy was the thing that precipitated the crisis. I think that basically the crisis was not caused by the housing bubble. The numbers don't match up. US total unemployment and housing sector employment should track if the housing sector makes sense. But actually, employment in the housing sector falls long before the US overall unemployment rate starts to fall. So that makes me think it's not a bubble. I think that the financial crisis was caused by an expectation. It was a financial crisis that was caused by the Great Recession, not the other way around, which is very counterintuitive. Obviously, too much to go into today. I subscribe to Robert Haskell's view, basically, that an anticipation of tight policy caused this. But Brian, I think, will not agree with that.
Well, this is just the question of our time. Why do we have these? Because they're cyclical economic cycles. We're always dealing with every number of years. Before 2008, there was the 2001 dot-com bubble. Before that, there was the 1993, 1994 Southeast Asian bubble. Before that, we have Black Friday in England in 1987. Before that, we've got 1980s 20% interest rates, just as Reagan and Thatcher compare. So why are there cyclical cycles? And that, well, I would ascribe to the traditional Austrian understanding of this. We say that there's fundamentally, to address the issue, to eliminate cyclical cycles, which we believe is possible, you have to strike at the root. And the root cause is in the laws that govern banks themselves in the modern world. As I mentioned in my talk earlier, since 1844, with Robert Peel's Bank Act, where deposits were not considered part of the money supply, and banks were given by the British Parliament unlimited capacity to create deposits, we have had a system where banks create money artificially, and this distorts the pricing system. I would say that the last place where communism, real communism, is still justified in academia is in central banking. Central banks are communist institutions that exist within a free market society because they try and abolish the function of the pricing mechanism by placing price controls on the value of money, which is the interest rate. So the interest rate is the price of money over time. And it is believed that by manipulating the interest rate, they can engineer a more prosperous society. All they do is lead to greater waste, and this is what Friedrich Hayek talked about in his essay, Pretense of Knowledge. If the central bankers pretend that they can know better than the marketplace itself what the interest rate should be, which is entirely a fallacy. And that is why we are going to face another economic crisis in a period of time. I don't know exactly when, but it will begin when the interest rates begin to rise. That will be the sign. Well, and that sounds absolutely right in that point. Interest rates rising precipitated the crisis, because that's Otherwise, malinvest, they've kept interest rates at zero, practically zero, for 8 years now. This has led to an enormous distortion of investments in everything. And how many financial instruments are tied to the interest rate? And the real value of these goods will not be known until interest rates rise. And then the emperor will be shown to have no clothes. And many of these financial institutions that are perceived to be profitable at the moment will be shown to have made terrible malinvestments. And that's why we need higher interest rates, because the longer this goes on, the more of our savings is going to be squandered in these malinvestments.
But isn't that an inherent issue of cheap money? Because I remember going to talk to Goodbody Stockbrokers in 2004, and the chief economist there, he was talking about, the various reasons for, people were throwing out the theory about, we thought it was a problem in 2004, about the price of housing rapidly escalating. And one of the key things was the interest rate set by a bank other than our own bank, because it was the ECB. And so it suited largely the German and French economies, but it didn't suit Ireland because money was too cheap. And historically, and again, I'm not an economist, but isn't the vast majority of problems that we face due to the oversupply of cheap money, where people make far riskier investments compared to, say, in Australia and Israel, where with independent central banks, they raised interest rates. I believe Howard's government raised interest rates in Australia to about 6%, which in today's money, or the last 10 years, is very, very high. But that's slowed things down. But unfortunately, if interest rates are very low for a long time, people are caught up, and then you have essentially a dependency culture. And then, as I think maybe as raising interest rates, then it almost becomes too late. It becomes too dangerous. People are too invested in it. So we were far too unresponsive for far too long, because we in Ireland certainly didn't have control over interest rates.
Well,
that's great.
Well, I was just going to say that there's nothing inherently wrong with low interest rates. It's how the low interest rates come about. Because naturally, when you have an increase in savings in society, you have more money in banks to be lent out. And so, if the supply of a good increases, the demand remains the same, the price will fall. So interest rates should naturally fall as savings increase. And that's a wonderful sign for our economy, and it does help investments. However, because of our debt creation system through the central banks, it's artificially, and this is the important thing, we love low interest rates, they're fantastic. We have to go about it the right way. They're trying to short-circuit the marketplace by forcing them down artificially creating money, and that is where the problem lies.
I'm going to go to someone here, but I guess a very good point, an excellent point, and I know Cormac Lucy in our group has written about this a couple of times, about the overweening influence of the central bank here and central banks in Europe and elsewhere. I mean, I think it goes back again to what is the idea of what we all aspire to, which is the lowest form of government we can have. So you want a policeman because to stop people from going over and killing other people, and that's it. You want your central bank to be a policeman, but as you said, the central bank is now levering the economy, it's manipulating, and think of it in this country where it's like on steroids, where we have a very reactive political culture, where through talk shows and debates, oh yeah, we'll change this property thing, okay, the first time buyers ban, oh, we'll intervene here. So it's like, it's a very good point.
I don't want a central bank at all. I mean, prior to the 1844 Banking Act in Scotland, they didn't have a central bank. Banks issued their own currencies. They competed with each other on the reliability of the banknotes. It's a fascinating era because so many of the things to do with modern banking came from that. Because there's so much innovation, branch banking, lots of interesting things like that. But it was one of the most remarkably stable and prosperous periods of any Western country in history. And Adam Smith himself, although he later changed his mind, the Wealth of Nations attributes a lot of Scotland's amazing growth in that period to this banking system. He changed his mind later on. A friend of mine, Tyler Goodspeed, has written a book, kind of why Adam Smith was wrong, basically, about it, which we hosted. Well, we should never criticize the Lord himself, Adam Smith. But we don't need a central bank. That's the point. This is any more than we need a central car production Soviet or any of that. Money should be like any other good in the market. It should be. The interest rate should come from the market for loanable funds. How much people are willing to save versus how much people want to borrow. And anything else that we do. I mean, I think that we could run our central bank less badly than we do. I think there's a different target we could use, for example, but it would still